Let's discuss. Let's talk about one of the most talked about court cases in America this week. The case involving Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. Before we begin, I want to say this. This story is tragic. No matter what side of the debate you're on, a young man lost his life and another young man lost his freedom. Two families are hurting. And social media has turned this case into a battlefield of opinions, politics, race discussions, and emotional arguments. But as believers, we have to step back and ask, what can we learn from this through a biblical lens? For those unfamiliar with the case, the incident happened during a Texas high school track meet in April of 2025. According to trial testimony, a confrontation broke out while Anthony was under another school's tent during a rain delay. The disagreement escalated and Anthony stabbed Metcalf in the chest. Anthony claimed self-defense while prosecutors argued the stabbing was unjustified.
Strong emotions this week in Texas after a jury found 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony guilty of murder in the stabbing of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. Anthony was sentenced to 35 years in prison. The two teens were high school track athletes at competing schools. They were both 17 at the time of the incident. The jury rejected Anthony's claim that he killed Metcalf in self-defense. The closely watched trial is sparking debate over self-defense, race, and school safety.
This morning, we're joined by attorney Joanne Molinaro to discuss this case and why it has become so divisive. Good morning, Joanne.
Good morning, ladies.
Thanks for being with us. This is a case they're talking about all over the nation, and I know you've talked about it on your Instagram page, so I wanted to have you on to discuss it.
Yeah, well, it's a sad case. It's very, very tragic. We have a young man who lost his life and another young man who's going to be spending a good chunk of his adult life in jail.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so one of the sticking points in this case is that all the black jurors were struck from the jury. How is that even legal in 2026?
So to be very specific, there was a large jury pool, about roughly 500 people, and jurors were eliminated for largely legitimate reasons, and included among that were Black American jurors. I think what's causing a lot of controversy, though, is that once the jurors reached the strike pool, which is the area in which prosecutors and defendants counsel can choose to strike certain jurors, all of the black jurors remaining in that strike zone were struck by the prosecutor. Now, think of it kind of like a dinner party. You're planning with your partner, right? Each party gets 10 strikes, and they can strike for any reason other than race or other improper reason. And in this case, the prosecutor said it had nothing to do with race, but it's very eyebrow-raising that all of the remaining black jurors were struck by his strikes.
Wow. Joanne, 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony claimed he stabbed Austin Metcalf in self-defense. So can you explain why that argument didn't hold up with the jurors?
Well, there are really two reasons that probably prevented that from sticking with the jurors. And the first one is a proportionality argument, right? Deadly force is only permitted when there's a, protection of otherwise deadly force. A shove or a push, that doesn't rise to the level of saying, I'm going to take my knife out now and respond in kind. It's not an in-kind response. I think the other reason the jury probably had a problem with that was, of course, the statement that was uttered by the defendant right before he was bullied, which is, you're going to come at me and you're going to find out. And then he reaches into his pocket for that weapon. That provoking statement under Texas law prevented an appliance of self-defense as we would otherwise might have seen.
Right. And of course, Anthony's lawyers argued that Metcalf was much larger, and that's why his push was met with a stab. But the jury did not go with that argument. The jury also in Texas decides not only the verdict, but the sentence here. How did that complicate this case?
So in Texas, it's one of like 6 states in the country that permits the jury to derive the sentence. And in this particular case, it was actually defendant who made that election. Now, the defendant elected to have the jury render the sentence before the defendant knew what the makeup of that jury might be. So they took a big gamble here. And in this situation, given the composition of the jury and what we have statistically seen happens when an all-white jury is rendering either a verdict or a sentence to a Black American defendant, some have thought perhaps that is why we're seeing a rather harsh sentence to a 17-year-old defendant.
This week, a jury rejected the self-defense claim, found Anthony guilty of murder, and sentenced him to 35 years in prison. Now here's the reality. Most people online immediately picked a side. Some said it was clearly murder. Others said it was clearly self-defense. But one thing nobody can debate is that one moment of anger changed multiple lives forever. And that's where the Bible has something powerful to say. In James 1 verses 19 and 20, it says, "Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." Think about that. A situation that started as a verbal confrontation ended with a teenager dead and another teenager facing decades in prison. The Bible repeatedly warns us about uncontrolled anger because anger often promises control but delivers destruction. Another lesson from this case is the danger of making life-changing decisions in emotional moments. Proverbs 14 verse 29 says, "Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly." One decision, one reaction, one moment. Sometimes people think their biggest life decisions will happen in a boardroom or a church service, but many life-changing decisions happen in seconds. That's why self-control is so important. The Bible calls self-control a fruit of the Spirit for a reason. Now, let's address something else. This case has generated enormous debate about race, justice, self-defense, and fairness. Social media has amplified every single angle of the story. But believers have to be careful not to let political tribes become more important than truth. The Bible says in Proverbs 18 verse 17, "The first to present their case seems right until another comes forward and questions him." In other words, wisdom requires patience. Not every viral post tells the whole story. Not every headline contains all the facts. Not every social media influencer is giving balanced information. As Christians, we should seek truth before rushing to judgment. The biggest tragedy in this story is not simply a court verdict. It's the reminder of how fragile life really is. Life is precious. Life is fragile, and none of us are promised tomorrow. So, what's the takeaway? This case isn't just about a courtroom. It's about choices. It's about anger. It's about self-control. And it's about consequences. It's also about the value of human life. Whether people agree with the verdict or disagree with it, believers should pray for both families. Pray for healing, pray for justice, and pray for peace. Let this story remind us that one decision made in a heated moment can alter the course of multiple lives forever. Because while culture argues over sides, the Bible keeps pointing us back to wisdom, self-control, accountability, and the value of every human life made in the image of God.